In 2016, I was 26. I worked a seasonal job in a warehouse about a 30-minute drive from my apartment. One day after work, I had ordered takeout, Thai, from a place maybe 10 blocks from home. There was a gas station next door, so I filled up and left my car at the pump. I went to say hi to some friends who lived across the street while I waited for my food to be ready. Maybe 15 minutes of chatting later, I walked back across the street, grabbed my food, got into my car, and drove 2 minutes to my apartment. At the time, I lived in a duplex, with a gutted-out adjacent attached. Behind me was an old vacant motel that was also being gutted and repurposed into studio apartments. The nearest building to the left was an old bar leading to the main street and the highway. To the right was an empty lot where a building that was demolished nearly a decade earlier once stood. The rest of the neighborhood was lower-income families. I pulled into my drive. I noticed a car driving relatively slow pass by. I went inside and got my dog to leash her out. As I was standing in the yard waiting for the dog to do her business, a maroon Subaru Forester, the same car from before, passed by a few more times before slowly pulling into my driveway. I assumed he was lost or looking for something, so I walked up to him as he got out of his car and approached me. He looked like any older man in his 50s. I remember he kind of reminded me of my dad. I asked him if he needed anything, and he replied, "No, I was just checking on you." I asked him if I knew him, figuring maybe I didn't recognize him. He replied, "I saw you up by the gas station. You seemed like you needed help. Just seeing if you need anything." I'm usually pretty slow to the cut, but at this point, I'd pieced together that this man had followed me from the gas station to a friend's house, to a restaurant, and then home. It immediately didn't sit right. He was just standing there now. He wasn't leaving, and I had no time to process the situation. So I said again, "I'm sorry, I'm not picking up what you're putting down. Why are you here?" "Nothing. I'm just a nice guy checking to see if you're all right." I specifically remember him calling himself a nice guy. During this period of the conversation, I had made it to my stoop, but he had closed the gap. In front of me was the door. Behind me, my dog trailed closely. The man was gaining as we made our way to the door. I told him over my shoulder, "You should leave." To which he asked, "Do you wish you had a nicer place?" As he got closer to my dog, he reached out toward her for a pet. I yanked her towards me and said, "No," then pretty aggressively told him, "Dude, leave." He finally started backing away. I stood in the doorway until he got in his car and drove off. I took a photo of his license plate and a car description. Then I went inside. Less than 15 minutes later, he pulled back into my driveway, sat there for a second, and drove off. That's when I decided to file a police report. It didn't sit right. I just figured it was nothing, but I lived alone, and if anything happened, I'd want a record. It was 6 or 7 p.m. at this point, so the non-emergency line was closed. I filled out a report online and never heard back from the police. I never saw that man or his maroon Forester again either. He might have just been a weird old man. I never saw any reports of anyone going missing from Nevada in 2016 either. I know it's a stretch and probably has nothing to do with anything, but I only just thought of this the last few months. They caught a guy in New York, and I wondered if he was in Nevada before it ever came out. Same age, same build, but how do you remember a face from 7 years ago? I just remember the man at my place having more salt and pepper hair. He treated me like he thought I was soliciting and he wanted to help. He did not respect my boundaries. It was probably nothing, probably not the same man. Scary, off situations just have a way of sticking with you. Maybe trying to connect this is my way of making it make sense.